Yeah. Well, they should try it, like 12 steps here. They're different. This one will have different tones. Good morning. Good morning. Let's all rise and body your spirit and sing our opening song, number 1010. We give thanks.
Welcome. My name is Bill Reynolds, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice. Come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, or how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you are welcome here. If you come here with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, then you are indeed welcome here. And I'd like to offer a special welcome today to Reverend Susan, who is joining us for the month of July. And I hope over the next few weeks you'll get to know her well. She's a fascinating person. And you can go online at our website at UUCOV.org for a very lengthy bio, which I will not read here because we'll be here till about 2 o'clock. But it's fascinating. I will just give a kind of an overview. Reverend Karlson's career has taken her on a road trip across America. She has been a settled minister at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Wilmington, North Carolina, and at the Unitarian Church of Staten Island in New York. Most recently, she was the contract minister for the UU Church of Savannah, Georgia. She served as a consulting minister at Gulfport, Mississippi, after Hurricane Katrina, and is actively involved with the Unitarian Universalist Trauma Response Ministry. Prior to her UU experience, Reverend Karlson had a career in social work in Southern California and Charlottesville, Virginia, and she had a previous calling as a yoga and meditation teacher. Today, on the eve of our Independence Day, she reminds us that freedom is a loaded word. It can lift us up and remind us of our core values, or It can lead to ideas that cause harm and divisiveness. She will explore what it means to be a free church at this time in the United States. Do we have any visitors for the first time today that would care to rise and tell us your name and where you're from? We do not. Okay. In that case, we will do our a couple announcements. We don't have too many announcements today. But on Wednesday at 11:30 at Black Gold, Reverend Karlson will be there to have a cup of coffee, so please feel free to join her at that time. And then on Thursday in Waters Hall on the Lanai at 1 p.m., she will be there for fellowship, and you can join her there as well. And finally, you can also meet with her on Zoom, and I assume that the link will be on the calendar. Is that correct, Kathy? Yeah, link is on the calendar. From 4:30 to 6 p.m. And these are going to be weekly things that you do every single week, so that'd be great. I also just want to point out the lovely flowers that we have today that are festive for the holiday, compliments of Donna Jewett, and I thank you very much for that. And we could pass the baskets. Do we have ushers passing the baskets today? I think we do. And while we're doing the basket collection, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I wanted to take a moment as the baskets are passed to thank all who invest in our congregation. You may invest with pledges, you may invest in the basket each week, you may just invest your time and your skills, you may invest all three different ways. And if you're at home, I hope you'll click the big old donate button that's on the top of the webpage and make a donation there. And now collectively, we're stewards of this congregation. And I hope that the investment that you make brings you a return on investment as great as it's brought to me. So I wanted to thank you for that and just pass that on to you. Okay, we're going to do our prelude, which is Prelude in C sharp major from the Well-Tempered Clavier book by Johann Sebastian Bach. Hi. I finally get to see you after all this time. It's so wonderful. And I just want to give a shout out to Kathy, who has been so helpful in making me feel welcome and catching me up on things, and Sally, who also we had a Zoom call. I think you all maybe aren't aware of how the staff and the people, the pianist and the tech people, how Edward
and all those folks, how they all work together to make this happen. And I just am very thankful that they kind of showed me around and made me feel welcome. So, our call to worship this morning. We come together to celebrate freedom. Freedom in its many forms this Independence Day weekend. One of the forms is the free church that we're a part of right now. So we turn to the 2000 men's lecturer, the Reverend Blair Wesley, who's quoted in Widening the Circle of Concern in the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. And here's what she has to say. In truth, the simple, transparent, potent idea of the free church has had to be, time and time again, reconceived, reconstructed in human imagination from memories of the traditions so obscured or twisted or bent out of shape over time as to be almost gone from the world. And yet, religious freedom, that ideal of the free church, is lifted aloft time and time again. And we lift it up again today. So come, let us worship together.
As we gather for worship with the words that Reverend Susan has shared with us, we light the chalice with the words of Judith L. Quarles in A Community of Faith. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light the chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. Pardon me. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing our next hymn, number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. Good morning to all of you. I almost can't see. Our story for all ages this morning is called The Answer is in Your Hands.
from an Indian folk tale. There was once a wise woman who lived by herself near a small village. Rumor had it that she could always accurately predict when the rains would come, or heal a sick child with herbs, or calm angry neighbors and help them to resolve well, the story is the answer is in your hands. And so all of you out there wanted to make sure you heard the first part of the story because it is a precious, precious story. There once was a wise woman, we'll start again, who lived by herself near a small village. Rumor had it that she could always accurately predict when the rains would come, when they would fall down, when there was a sick child and she could heal them with herbs, or calm angry neighbors and help them to resolve their fights, their arguments. People came from all over the land to meet with her and seek her advice on matters both small and great. Her reputation was such that it was said she was never wrong, not ever. But guess what? Some of the children, as so often happens with children, they didn't believe it was possible to always be right. How could anyone always be right? Surely she couldn't know everything. Could anyone ever know everything? No. So they decided to test her knowledge. First, they asked her to answer questions about the planets and the animals and the world in general. And it didn't matter how hard the question was. She always answered it correctly. The children were amazed at her knowledge and learning, and most were ready to stop testing her. But there was one boy that was determined to prove that the old woman couldn't know everything. And so he hatched this devious scheme of how he and his friends would set a situation up where he would prove she was a faker. All through the next day, he hunted for a bird, and finally, he caught a small songbird in a net. Holding it behind his back so no one could see what was in his hands, he walked triumphantly to the woman's home. "Old woman," he called, "come and show us how wise you are." The woman walked calmly to the door, and she said, "May I help you?" "You say you know everything," said the boy. "Prove it. What am I holding behind my back?" The old woman thought for a moment. She could make out the faint sound of rustling in a bird's wing. And so she said, "I don't say I know everything. I don't say I know everything, but I do believe you are holding a bird in your hands." The boy was really furious now. How could the woman have possibly known he had a bird? So thinking quickly, he came up with a new scheme. He would ask the woman whether the bird was alive or dead, and if the woman replied alive, he would crush it in his hands. I know, and prove that she was wrong. And if she said it was dead, he would pull the living bird from behind his back and allow it to fly away. Either way, he would prove his point, and the wise woman would be discredited. "Very good," he called. "It is a bird. But now tell me, is the bird I am holding alive or dead?" The wise woman paused for a long moment while the boy waited with anticipation for his opportunity to prove her wrong. Again, the woman spoke calmly. The answer, my young friend, is in your hands. The answer is in your hands. And the boy realized suddenly that the wise woman had once again spoken correctly and truthfully. The answer was indeed in his own hands. And feeling the bird feebly moving in his hands as it tried to escape, he felt suddenly very, very, very ashamed. The answer was in his hands. So slowly and gently, he brought his hands to the front of his body, and looking into the eyes of the delicate bird, he apologized. "I'm sorry, little one. I'm sorry." And he opened his hands to let her go free. Now, this is your story to ponder and treasure.
Okay, it's time for celebrations and sorrows. And Reverend Susan's going to go around with the mic,
And she's going to turn it on.
and she's going to turn them on. Does anybody have a celebration that they'd like to share today? No celebrations. How about a sorrow? Any sorrows that anybody wants to share? Quiet group today. We have one. Yes.
Good, I get some exercise.
Hi. I just want to say we're not supposed to be political, okay? But I just want to remind you that our wonderful legislature went all the way through their session and didn't do anything about criminal justice reform yet. So if we can gently remind them we're expecting something next time, that would be really helpful without being political. Thank you.
Anybody else have something to share? Okay. May we remember the celebrations, joys, and sorrows spoken here today, and honor those that are held in silence within our hearts. And we'll go to our interlude, which is the first movement from Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2, by Ludwig van Beethoven.
This Independence Day, we lift up the work of all of us to bring about greater freedom, courage, and abundant love. And we hear echoes of these ideals in the quote by poet, essayist, and feminist Adrienne Rich. "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed, I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world." Will you join me now in singing number 159, "This Is My Song," and please rise in body or spirit as you're willing and able. Please be seated. Fourth of July is a time to lift up certain shining ideals of our history. The freedom and the independence and the equality and equity that we still struggle with 246 years later. Sometimes these ideals are used to promote United States exceptionalism while diminishing other countries and cultures. Yet, as this song that we just sang, "This Is My Song," reminds us, the homes, the blue skies, the ocean's turquoise waters that surround us have parallel skies and fields and beauty that resonate with other hearts and other lands. These ideals, too, are shared by the people of other countries, other cultures. These past 2 years, we all know we've witnessed the rise of freedom as a word that could be lobbed against people with opposing views. Recall the freedom highlighted in recent weeks to break into the Capitol of the United States Congress, to threaten the peaceful transfer of power to threaten to kill members of Congress. All that happened on January 6th. And there is a recent cartoon by Bill Bramhall that shows, I'm trying to paint a picture for you here. It shows a police officer approaching a couple in a pickup truck with a gun rack and a gun behind them. And the woman says to her male companion, "Relax, relax, honey. I had hid the contraceptive pills in the gun." This brand of humor makes us laugh. Maybe it eases a little bit of the tension, but it also points out, and I don't really think of this as political, I think of this as the environment we're swimming in. It also lifts up the tragedy of these Supreme Court decisions, the irony which strikes a chord in so many progressive people and people all across this country. These past 2 weeks, we've seen the Supreme Court apply the idea of independence to two seemingly contradictory rulings. On the one hand, guns will not be regulated, but on the other, women's bodies will no longer be theirs to control. I imagine so many families having discussions about these questionable decisions, and my family and I had the same kind of discussion. My spouse, Alan, who is with me today, he'll go back to Savannah after that this week, but hope you'll welcome him. He had this uncanny perspective when we talked, and he gave me permission to share it with you. I don't say things that my family members, because too many of us ministers use our families in that way, so I definitely got his permission. He said that women now have the right to carry military-grade weapons that could slaughter the African Americans at the Tops Grocery in Buffalo, New York, or the 19 children and 2 teachers in the Uvalde, Texas elementary school. Women can do that. We could do that. Yet women now, according to the Supreme Court, don't have the right and are judged incompetent, really, to make decisions that pertain to their own health and their own well-being. In one situation, the choice is given to all of us, and the other, it is not. And Justice Clarence Thomas even broadened the scope of the decision to include questions about marriage equality, sex for LGBTQI folks, and the right to safe, available contraception for everyone. You put these 2 rulings and Justice Thomas's interpretation together, and you witness a bit of the controversy and the divisiveness that grips this country. July 4th is the day that we remember those patriots we enshrine in our historical memory, or at least a part of our history. Since history is so important on this day, I thought we might look at Unitarian Universalist history and the notion of the free church, because the ideal of independence is very much contained as part of the underlying principle defined by that long ago debate. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard, how many here have heard of the Cambridge platform? Anybody? That's great, because now I can tell you a little bit about it, because it was kind of a founding document of ours. The Cambridge platform of 1848 espoused congregational polity, or what is governance, how we govern ourselves, and the interdependence of congregations at the same time. So, autonomy and interdependence. It stated that there is no greater church than a congregation, so squarely in that realm, that its members joined in a voluntary agreement, or what we sometimes call our covenant, to worship, to edify, to have fellowship together. Each congregation was autonomous, and yet, congregations were also connected and unified. There's the call from beyond that connects us, isn't it? They offered one another, these congregations, care, consultation, admonition, participation, recommendation, and relief. So all those things, even though they're autonomous, they also band together to offer each other those things. So they're not alone. One congregation is not alone. As Conrad Wright wrote in his book, Walking Together, congregationalism meant, and it still means, not the autonomy of the local church, but the community of autonomous churches. See the difference? A little different there. Now, this may sound like it's sorting out bits of irrelevant history, but congregational polity or governance is not simply about each congregation having inordinate freedom. That view ignores the deeper aspects of Unitarian Universalism that urge us to build the beloved community together. And in fact, the moral of our story for all ages stress that the answer is in each person's hands. But in the case of congregations, the answer is in our hands. Widening the circle of concern, which is the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, which came out in June 2020, summarizes their multi-year research on how Unitarian Universalism can move forward in addressing racism and white supremacy, encouraging a deeper, theologically centered faith. Over 3 years, they conducted focus groups, they gathered testimonies, they compiled surveys, they created a report that lifted up promising practices gleaned from their intensive study and their work. Beginning in the mid-20th century, the Commission states, more Unitarian Universalists were come-inners than birthright Unitarian Universalists. Those finding Unitarian Universalism during the 1960s to the 1980s were interested in getting away from religious practices that they felt were non-rational, demeaning, illogical. The emphasis was on personal freedom. The answer is in your hands. In recent decades, the Commission on Institutional Change proclaims more of those entering our doors or our live streaming rooms have been attracted by our beliefs, by our interest in whatever tenets of our faith we hold in common. And this change in perspective underlies the radical notion of our chosen faith, that the answer in building a faith community together lies in our hands, our collective community of hands. They write that our emphasis sometimes on hyper-individualism and the legacy of the consolidation of Unitarianism and Universalism have led to a culture of mistrust that is augmented when difference is in play, as it certainly is right now. We've spent time comparing our religious wounds rather than healing them. We've often operated from a least common denominator approach rather than linked to our highest values as a people of faith. And it occurs to me that this emphasis on rugged individualism that we inherited in part from our essential and our esteemed transcendentalist forebears is a commonplace notion in our society. To move with the times, we have to have great courage. Great courage. The word courage originally came from the Latin word cor. It meant to speak one's truth, one's mind, by telling all one's heart, sharing all of one's heart. Which doesn't mean that my heart has any more value than yours, or that my views are more important than another. It means that we look boldly at where our heart calls us to, what our heart calls us to enact in this world. On this July 4th, with fireworks that we know are coming, and I hear you do a pretty spectacular fireworks, right? I'm getting some nods here. It brings up love of country, love of our own personal rights, love of our friends, our family, our Unitarian Universalist community. The concept of freedom often feels very personal, very independent. But there is, and I just want to add this perspective to the importance of those things, of our personal views and values. The concept of freedom can be broader. It's where our hearts expand, where our lives are connected to others inside these rooms and these Zoom rooms and all these live streaming ways, and in the community out there. Likewise, the church is not just my free church, my friends, my choices, though all of these are important. I'm not diminishing that at all. It's also about what connects us heart to heart, what connects us in voluntary agreement or covenant, another important part of Unitarian Universalism. The covenant, the voluntary covenant that we agree on. That is what holds us together in spite of all our different views and all our different outlooks. And every UU congregation that I've ever seen contains within itself very many different views and outlooks. Freedom, that word, that important word, is about what brings us together, what holds us together, what holds us strong even when things like pandemic and mass shootings and horrible, horrible things happen. It's the covenants, it's the commitments that we make that bring us together again. Our hearts have a wisdom that's perhaps more courageous, more open, more accepting than our personal needs or wants. This congregation, as I understand it, is engaging deeply with reimagining shared ministry. And you've had a great experiment here for the past 6 months, haven't you? Having what people have shared with me that you call the Minister of the Month Club. Looking beyond your ministry, your wonderful ministry with Reverend Kleber, and all of those that you've shared with these 5 months and hopefully with me. You've gone beyond to find the answer that lies in your hands, individually and collectively, during these challenging times. How might you change some of your customs, some of your ways of doing church, some of the ways you probably have been doing these past number of months? How might you open your doors and your Zoom rooms to welcome in folks with different perspectives and education and cultures, experiences, to focus on the answer within your hands? And I can't imagine that you wouldn't be going through it more when you have your interim minister here next month, Reverend Amy Shaw. I call this time in a congregation's life the in-between times. For in so many ways, it's a metaphor for the Jewish people who left behind their lives before in Egypt to move forward towards a transformative life in a land far away. They left behind everything they knew, except their community. They spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness with Moses as their leader, and I promise you it will not take you that long. At first, those early Jewish people only remembered the hardship and the struggle as they journeyed forward. But then the past and the present coalesced to create a fuller sense of community, a continuity that was capable of holding them. They left some things behind. They grieved parts of their former life, even as horrific as it sometimes was. And slowly they began to see visions for a future they hadn't known was possible before. You see, sometimes you have to leave something behind to see what is in your future and your present. So you at UUCOV have the opportunity to think and feel with great heart and courage, to take that freedom that accompanies the ideals of the free church. You're already co-creating it with the ministers, the staff, one another. And to move forward, you'll have to go through more sojourning in transition. That's just the path you're on for now. Congregational life gives us all the opportunity to confront the ideals of freedom and interdependence, and then take that experience into society and make change together with others. And so maybe like the original Cambridge platform that you've learned about, you can join more frequently with other Unitarian Universalist congregations in neighboring cities and others nationally, because now we have that capability, right, to be with people from everywhere. And maybe with other faiths, more often with other faiths in this area. We have congregational polity to call clergy, to elect board members, to organize our church. But we are not alone. You are not alone. We are part of a world that is connected through love and through great heart. And may you be true to this aspect of this Unitarian Universalist faith and know that the answer is in all our hands. May it be so. And now for our closing hymn, number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, and we're going to sing all the verses. That's going to be a joy. So please rise and body your spirit as you feel called to do, for we are a gentle, angry people. That's not all we are.
Singing for
This benediction is from the stirring words of Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. End of the quote. So let us be courageous in the struggle, examining our deepening heart song, living out the freedom that results in beloved community and greater connection with all our neighbors, with ourselves. So may it be. Amen. Ashe. Shalom.